Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Often Wrong. Today, we are talking about our beloved two-party system. And when I say beloved, I mean we hate it. So we're going to break down why it's happening, what we can do about it, and what exists beyond the binary of the two parties. Let's get into it. Hey, listeners. Thank you so much for joining us again for this episode of Often Wrong. If you are enjoying how this season is rolling out, you can engage further by liking, subscribing, leaving a comment on wherever you listen to your podcast or on our website at carrotimpact.com/oftenwrong. From all of us at Often Wrong, thank you so much, and let's get back into the show.
Hi, people. Welcome back to Often Wrong.
Welcome.
We're your hosts, Claire Cornetta
and Lisa Nwankwo.
And today we are talking about the two-party political system in the United States. And I don't know about you, but we've had this feeling for a long time, not just since last November. Like, no matter what side you were on or weren't on, there was no good outcome, no viable choice. And today we want to explore that and talk through, maybe that feeling isn't detachment or apathy, but maybe it's our intuition telling us we deserve more than just a choice between two versions of the same stuckness. So, yeah, I think it's a good time to talk about the political system generally and how we've built it around opposition, not cooperation, not complexity, just really opposition. And, that structure doesn't just shape our elections, but it shapes the way that we think about what's possible. And it tells us that there are only two containers. We get reinforcement of that binary. You have two containers for your values, your fears, your futures, your beliefs. But what happens then when every social issue, every issue gets shoved into a left or right binary? And what happens then when your only real power is reduced to a vote you don't actually feel good about? So this episode is about that, about the way that the two-party system doesn't just fail to represent us, it prevents us from even fully seeing each other. And, it really rewards this siloed, these siloed identities. And
shout out to our silo episode.
Shout out to our siloed episodes, consolidating power. And, I'll also say it flattens movements and it punishes anyone who tries to think more expansively. And shout out to our revolution episode. If revolution is about shifting power, then maybe the first shift we need is in how we think about choice and about belonging and about what democracy could actually look like if it were built on relationship instead of rivalry. And again, that's that relational thinking rather than binary thinking. So, Lisa, let's talk about the good old two-party system. And,
would love to.
Yeah, I think we're going to do today what this show does best and look at what we've told is natural and ask if it's actually just wrong.
Yeah. So like always, we can start with this just overview of what the two-party system is. So when we talk about the two-party system in the US, we're talking about this political structure that is dominated by two major parties. You know them well. It's the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. While other parties do exist and they fight to emerge and sustain themselves, the system is set up through electoral rules, The system is set up through electoral rules like winner-take-all voting and single-member districts, and they overwhelmingly favor these two parties. So that means that most elections, from local to federal, tend to boil down to just a binary choice every time. So this isn't the case in a lot of other democracies where we have representation that's more proportional, they have ranked voting, and it allows for multiple parties to be viable, and it allows for coalition governments. So in the US, the two-party system has shaped not just our elections, like Claire said, but the way that we think about our political identity, our loyalty, and even our morality. Or do they? I don't know. That's hard to say. But it does, in our minds, define what our morality looks like. And I think that's worth unpacking now when we have 4 years to change this.
Yeah.
Federally.
I would agree with you. And sorry, while you were talking, I was trying to arrange my fingers on the microphone in a less gay way.
No.
I was getting a little bit
Pride starts in
shy.
2 days. Don't do that.
I know. I'm sorry. I'll go back to the way that I was holding it. Yes, this is a a great time to think about things, and I think I think yes, we have a certain amount of time before our next federal election. Am I confident that anything's going to change in that time? No, but I am confident that laying the groundwork for thinking about things in a more nuanced way and a more relational way is going to do good at every level, not just
Definitely.
federal level.
I super
So,
agree. And this topic, like every topic, has a lot to do with how you think about yourself and the way that you
yeah.
move through the world. And as always, we would love it if you left your comments. If, as you're listening to this, you have a thought and you have a point, or whether you agree or disagree, we definitely want to hear from you, because the point of this is that we start a good conversation.
Yes.
And we are okay if you tell us that we're wrong. So you can do that at our Instagram, which is at often wrong pod. You can do it at carrotimpact.com/often wrong, or you can do it in the comment section of wherever you're listening to.
Yes. Thank you. So, I think getting into it, we were really born into this system, right? If you're an American, or if you came here when you were young, like this is the system we were born into. And look, there's a lot of beauty in the way that the idea of our system was set up in terms of, once everybody got the right to vote, which took a really long time. Once they did, great, nice idea. However, the sides, the binaries, the two parties, it really feels like it's setting us up for failure, and in a lot of different ways. So I'm curious, when did you kind of first become aware of sides in politics?
I was in fifth grade. Or actually, no, I think I was in fifth grade or sometime in elementary school. But we had a school-wide election for the Al Gore, George W. Bush election.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who won, but I do remember one, there was that was when I first heard the sentiment that you're not supposed to tell anyone who you vote for.
Yes.
And so that was a big thing. We weren't allowed to talk about it, but we had to vote. And I also had no idea what this election was about. But I did know that the red was not good for some reason. And I didn't really know why. And that also Al Gore was a dork. So that was my first election as a child. And it wasn't fun. It wasn't that interesting. But yeah, you could tell there was a division of two sides. You cannot talk about it because it causes fights, and that one of them is bad. We don't know why.
Yep. Yeah. That's a really good point. I remember the same thing, being like told to vote in a mock election, but you couldn't tell anyone who you voted for. What a weird way to engender shame in
Why
young
do it at
children
all?
right away.
If we can't talk about it, what's the point of doing it?
Odd. And I mean, to this day, obviously, at any age, people can be very cagey about who they voted for. But like, again, that's not the fault of the individual. That's what the hell kind of system are we set up to participate in, that we don't want to tell people what we believe, or like what we, how we think something should look like. Good Lord. So, well, then on the other hand, there are a lot of people who spew hate with little to no filter. So, I guess two sides of the coin. But do you remember who you voted for?
I think it was Al Gore, but I don't really remember. It didn't matter to me at the time.
Yeah.
I think I just associated Al Gore with like whales and animals.
Totally.
So I was like, okay.
This would have been pre-Inconvenient Truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But I imagine, well, I can't remember, but I assume his platform had a lot to do with the environment.
I imagine it did.
Because that's my only thing that I remember about him and that time, was that it was about either for the environment or not.
Yeah. Yeah, this would have been the 90s. Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
this would have been the 90s. Yeah. So that would have been, yeah, I don't have a great grasp of how people were talking about the environment in the 90s, but you
Yeah.
know?
Well, okay. So if you think about like a more real example of, I want to talk about the first time I actually got to vote, which was
Mm.
for Obama's first term. And that was really exciting because my dad is an immigrant. Well, he's a citizen now, but he's also an immigrant from Nigeria. And the Obama first term election was the first time that he was allowed to vote as well. So we both got to do that. It
Wow.
was very exciting. I was in college. And was I in college? Yeah, I was. And it was so exciting. Like the way that people like run into the streets for like the World Series. That's what we did for Obama. And it was so fun. We had that song, My President is Black, My Lambo's Blue. It was just the best time. We were so excited. And I think that radicalized me in one way because of all of the talking points and what I was
Yeah.
hearing, like the reasons why, beyond him being the first Black president, why this was going to be so revolutionary. And then also the way that he acted during that first term revolutionized me further, where I realized that more needed to happen. So
Mm.
I thought that was really interesting. And that was kind of I had my first election. It was very exciting. And then shortly thereafter that, I was like, oh, I'm not being represented here either. So yeah, I'm curious. What was yours? I know you're, significantly younger than me.
Ugh, God, don't remind me. I have so much longer to
She's
go.
an old soul.
Ugh. Um, that's a lovely story. Um, I so I think the first time I became aware of the sides, I remember my parents making comments I think it was probably around the same time that people were we were doing mock election voting or whatever, or some issue came up or something, and I was like, I was also in elementary school, and they were like, well, like a lot of these kids are just going to believe what their parents believe, and they're going to spew stuff, and because that's what they hear at home, and it was kind of I was like, oh, I guess that makes sense, and so in a way, I think that was actually very formative because I was like, wow, our environments just really shape us. And then there were the people who you'd see, and like my mom would tell me, stories about people in our family who, went the exact opposite direction of their parents as a form of rebellion, that kind of thing. Like, I think you see a good mix of things. But I remember I remember the first time I like tuned into an election was Obama's first term as well, um, or first race as well, and I remember being like so excited about that because and it was just the energy was cool. It was like, wow, first black president, like this is crazy, this is awesome, and just for what it stood for and represented, and that was very cool. Everyone was very excited, and I remember that feeling like this is nice. This is nice. And
And it
then
was also nice because it was the first time in like our collective generations of having hot people in the White House. And that was exciting as well.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. It's really true.
It does a lot for
And
morale.
yeah, and like he was cool. He listened to music. He played basketball. He had two
Mm-hmm.
young daughters who were beautiful. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was just cool. Like it was like an interesting, it felt more real than any other kind of like I was a kid when Bush was in the well, I was born during Clinton's. I almost just said reign. Um, Clinton's stint
Well,
in
that
the
was the
White
thing too.
House.
Clinton was cool. Clinton had
Yeah,
the
Clinton.
saxophone.
Yes,
He
Clinton
was
was
featured in Mary Kate and Ashley movies. Like
right.
he was a good time
I
until he
just
wasn't.
yeah, until he wasn't. Um, I just remember the shift that it felt like. Oh, people are really mad about this. Like
Mm-hmm.
people like there's some gross stuff happening here. And cuz I remember like, more conservative people in my family being like, "Oh, the taxes are going to go up, under Obama." But there was not vitriol. And then something changed in 2016, which was when I was allowed to vote for the first time. I was kind of like, "Ooh, ooh, what's this? What's going on here?" This is things are a little bit different. And
Wow,
it
how
was
dark.
I and obviously that was Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, but it was not we can again talk about the candidates themselves another time, but like, I just remember the hatred on both sides. And that was the first time I'd ever seen like right and left hating each other, like hating. And it was also the first time, like, I was in college, I was paying attention for the first time, and, in a way that was more, participatory, I guess. But that was a wake up call for me. And I was like, whoa, this is weird. But it actually wasn't until Trump took office in January that things got real for me, because I was kind of like, oh, this is like fun and weird. And like, I knew people on both sides, like who were actively like vocal about things. And then he took office and I was like, oh no.
That's really interesting because for me, I don't know which one is worse, actually. Having started off with such excitement voting for Obama and feeling like, yes, we can. And then it devolving shortly after that. Or for you to come in on Trump versus Hillary.
I honestly, yeah, I think both are pretty bad. I think both are bad.
So you kind of entered that without feeling unrepresented.
I also went into it very jaded to begin with. And I was like, what's the point of me voting in the federal election because of the Electoral College? So I was like, I'm registered to vote in Colorado. My vote literally does not matter. Like, Colorado's a blue state. It's going to go blue. So like, why would I, like, it doesn't matter either way. Like, it does not matter. And I remember being really into, like, I was into the propositions and I did so much research and like those things that actually mattered. But I was like, what's the point of this? So I just remembered feeling like completely disempowered, to vote in the federal presidential election. Other representatives and stuff, like, and, local ballot measures and whatnot in my hometown. Great. But like, everything else was just, but, obviously that didn't start in 2016. That's been there.
I was building.
Yep.
Well, okay. So the questions I have about this are, since your time being able to vote, and I'm actually going to just start with that time too, because before that it was exciting.
Yeah.
Two things. One, have you yet felt represented by the person you were voting for?
In a federal election?
Yeah. And if not, did you ever feel like you were just voting out of fear or obligation instead of any type of alignment at all?
I have never felt represented by someone I've voted for. Yeah. Like, from a belief standpoint. And at the federal level and the presidential level. And I have definitely voted out of just obligation or, I mean, honestly, fear. Yes. Yeah. Both.
Yeah. I think for me, since Obama first term, I have not felt represented. Honestly, 2016 was like a big year for me where there were so many people who were being killed by police, and my upset at how Obama was responding to it really triggered a lot for me. Yeah. And so, since that first one, it has not been good. And definitely voting out of fear. I remember I voted for Hillary Clinton, then I cried all the way home. Then the year after that, I voted for Joe Biden, cried for days, just because I was like, this is not it. Like, and it felt so bad because also you notice, and I don't know if this is by design or if this is just what happens. It just like happens to build up alongside the campaigning. But usually there's a major social issue, major social backlash. It feels like we're making progress right before an election. And then the election happens and everyone gives up. Yeah. And they're like, well, that's done. And so that one, especially with Joe Biden, I remember like doing the Black Lives Matter protests and feeling like change was possible. And then it being Joe Biden and it being like, really? After all that, that's what we're going to do and we're going to celebrate? Like, obviously there was enough to celebrate that it wasn't going to be Trump, but it also wasn't good enough. And that was all so sad.
I remember feeling like when Biden won in 2020 by a razor thin margin, and you remember like nobody knew the results for 4 days and it was a shit show. I remember feeling like I'm not happy because look at where we are. Like half the country still voted for Trump. Like, and the other half voted for Biden. But like, how is that winning ever?
Right.
How is that ever winning? And, it's so disheartening because the two-party system is so normalized in the US that many of us never even question it. It's just presented as
Hmm.
like democracy's default, you know,
Right.
donkey or elephant. And which I don't know how donkeys and elephants got dragged into this, but you know.
No, and it also just tells us that our only power is just in picking a side, which is so crazy. And
Yeah.
it's something I heard this quote a while ago. I don't know who said it, but I think it all the time where it's like they're not using their power, they're using yours and
Mhm.
pretending like they're giving this like horrible choice to you and being like, this is the most important thing you'll ever do.
Yep.
It's set up so you can't really do that much though, and that is hurtful.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's mm, it just it just irks me. And I hate that these sides, they really do become our identities. And
Mhm.
over time, they're weaponized. They lead to boundaries. We stop talking. I remember the phrase reaching across the aisle. Like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, like that's not even happening, but like, why is there an aisle between the two to begin with? And like,
Right. We
what's,
all live here together.
yeah. And, to be fair, it's not like there was I mean, I think it's easy to kind of go, oh wow, like yeah, the two parties used to work so much better together. Really, my understanding of what was happening is, it's still the political elite and it was kind of quid pro quo business transactions happening in government. That's just
Mhm.
kind of how it was. Um, so like, yes, Republicans and Democrats were more friendly because they were all, schmoozing each other and
I
whatever.
think it just stopped working and they had to
Yeah,
make it into this like us versus them, or else we would have caught on faster.
right. And media played a huge role in this, and
Hmm.
social media, and like how things were you know able to devolve in the public you know verbal space, like what people were assigning value to, what people were identifying with. It became about teams. It's not about like actual political transformation. And then, and we've seen this for a long time, but like the the bifurcation of social issues. Like, okay, well, Democrats got the pro-choice thing. Republicans got the, you know, um, pro guns. There's no room for anything else in the middle. Like we can't have any of the same views.
Hmm.
And not that either side has great answers to really anything, but like there are some things that it's like, oh, well that should be more in communication with this thing. And like
Right.
this should like why are we talking about all of this separately? And again, it's like silos upon silos in the issues, but also silos in, the beliefs and the houses that these are in. So, I think what is kind of I think what I want to talk about next though is really like when this structure becomes the story, when it becomes
Hmm.
the narrative. It's not just a cultural issue, it's not just a structural issue, it's both. And the system enforces these binaries by design. So
Hmm.
I really feel like, again, this is something that has been there for a long time, as long as our, electorate system has been set up, as far as I'm aware. Because it was like the Whigs and the what other party to begin with, but it was always pretty much, I think, two parties, like since 1776, like a long time.
Yeah.
Um, but since the dawn of social media and since, really like at the time when everyone was on social media. So like, let's call that like post 2012, because 2012 really would have been the first election where so much was happening on social media. 2008 kind of too, but 2012 more people were on. And then 2016, it was like full blown internet culture, stuff. And
Not to mention all those documentaries. I think there's one called like The Great Hack.
The Great Hack. Yep.
That's one's crazy. That talks
Yes.
about how they use social media to do that, to like kind of force people to fight with each other.
Yes.
And that
The social
was
dilemma.
mind blowing.
It's actually kind of really an interesting thing to study from like a socio-political standpoint. And like, I was in college when this was happening. I wrote my senior thesis actually on polarization, and the two-party system, and basically like what conditions allowed, the rise of Donald Trump and like that ideology, and which just felt so far flung. And obviously, the populist kind of uprising was happening all over the world. But it was very interesting to see. So I talked a lot about in my thesis effective polarization, and it's not just like, oh, we disagree on this thing. It's effective polarization says, we emotionally and socially and morally reject the other side. It's like the affect is so great. It's not just like, everything's way more charged. It's personal. And because
Which that's so crazy.
like, yeah.
Going back to what we were saying at the beginning of just how when we were kids, it was like, you never talk about politics,
Right.
never say who you voted for.
Right.
And now it's like, not only are you supposed to say it, but you should actually actively, publicly reject any thought that does not go alongside your party or, any thought, anything, and cast them away from you. And
Yep.
it needs to be a fight. And that's so interesting how that has changed in just our lifetimes.
It really has. And that's a good point. It's like, I just feel that, again, the point of this podcast is to encourage discourse and encourage people to talk about things and lean into being wrong. And that's okay. But the like charge behind all of this is so disheartening. And you're right. It changed it. And I think that's to your point, there was kind of like a decorum or like a respect for office that people had, like people respected the president, even if you were on whatever side, it was still kind of like there was
Kind of. I mean, yeah, but
you know what I mean? Decorum, I think, is the right word. There's another word that I can't remember.
no, but just the way that it pushed between also another binary of either saying nothing or say everything publicly.
Yeah.
And that really just totally bypassed the opportunity for like nuance and good questions and
Yep.
real discussion about what we're doing as a country and what we're doing with each other.
Yep.
And yeah, I feel like we have this totally flattened idea of a system and everything else, whether it's like, you are pro-choice or you're pro-abortion.
Yep.
Or no, you're pro-choice or you're anti-abortion.
Yeah.
You're pro-Palestine or you're for Israel. You're
Yeah.
either pro-cops or you're just anti-law. You are just an anarchist.
Pro-crime.
And not anarchist in the real sense of it, like anarchist in like the popular sense of it, or bad.
Yeah.
And you're either saving democracy or you're destroying it. And you're either saving our country or you are single-handedly responsible for ruining it. There is like no in between. And that's just not real. Like
100%.
Like this is one thing I say all the time is I'm like, people, if I'm in a conversation with someone who doesn't really know me or someone like my older brother who we just completely disagree politically, except for in this way, where I'll say, my politics are that no one needs to die and everyone should have a home. And that includes you, even if you don't agree with me. And those are my politics. That's really what it is. Like people deserve to live freely and not be harmed by themselves, by each other, or by the government. And that's it.
Yep.
All of these other things can be worked out honestly within that framework and it still works, holds up every way.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. That's a really nice way to look at it. I mean, honestly, though, it just, when you look at it like that from the baseline, and I talk about this a lot, like it's a baseline level of respect and care that you've established. Like once you've established, yes, I believe all humans should have the right to exist freely, like
Yeah.
and safely. Once you've established that, then it should really be about like a team effort of figuring out how we can meet those needs the best. And like
Mm-hmm.
humans are complex, our environments are complex. Like, you know, the federal government, I don't believe, is set up to handle nuance in everybody's, you know, community. Like a lot of this has to happen at the community level. A lot of it has to happen at the city level, the state level, you know, like, and feel like it's participatory, not, you know, like big government kind of situation, because that doesn't work. That idea of like, you know, I think the big government conversation is again one of those things that like I want to have a more nuanced conversation about why that doesn't work, but like the answers that are being given are not the right ones. Like the government, you know, regulating machine guns is not big government. That's not what that is. That's like something else. But like, you know, it just I want to have a more nuanced conversation about that. But this
Well,
structure,
yeah.
this structure discourages people
Yeah.
from asking deeper questions. And there is no space for nuance in this system because you have to pick
Absolutely.
one of two things. And that's it.
Right.
And you're either close to one side or you're close to the other side. It's that spectrum. You got a line and you pick one end of it to be closer to.
Or you have to gaslight yourself into believing that you agree with everything just so that you can have a team.
Yeah. Yep.
But
Yep.
I feel like you lose a lot when this happens. So I
Yes.
think, yeah, there's so much that is lost when we do this.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what you think about that. Like you just mentioned a really good one where you're losing this collaboration. You're losing community, good ideas that come from that.
Yeah.
And you're just, by doing this, by creating this kind of like forced hypocrisy all of the time, we're losing each other.
Yes. 100% we are. And you know, to your point about like we're losing good ideas, it's so tragic to me that like based on the letter after somebody's name, like R or D, that they will be discounted by most of the members of the other side. And it's just like, God forbid they have something that straddles the line, or, you know, even like I feel like there was a minute there where it was kind of like revolutionary and really interesting. And like some Republicans were actually coming out in support of gay marriage. And then like we quickly walked it back and it was like, it should be a state issue. It should be a state issue.
No, totally. Also, we mentioned this, like we touched on it for a second in the last episode, but even talking about like during Clinton versus Trump, when everyone started using the word deplorable all of the time.
Yes.
And I remember even this election, I noticed it a lot where because of the way things are set up, now we have Republicans who are changing what they originally said to line up with the party so that they can stay in power. Same thing with Democrats. And it's all nonsense. And even then, even worse is then I'm seeing people on social media who start repeating the things that politicians say. And I'm like, stop talking like them. Make them talk like us. That doesn't make sense. They're doing this whole like performance and they all are kind of pretending so that they can like fit in and they can like bait and switch and then do what they originally intended to do. But that completely loses the entire representative part of this democracy. This no longer is about what the people want. It's about how can I get into this club and stay in this club.
100%. 100%. And we should also say that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are businesses. They are enterprises, institutions that are very profitable for many people. This is about money and power on both sides.
It always is.
It
always
always
has been.
is. It always
This also
has been.
reminds me of a thing. Like I've been doing fundraising for nonprofits and organizers for most of my career. And that's one thing that I always end up talking about with people is that they try to fit like what a funder wants from them.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well, we'll just get this money. And then once we do what they want us to do, then we'll have time to do what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
They never find the time. It never works that way. They're just always chasing getting this financial support, which is what they need to do the work that they're going to do. But then everyone loses the plot.
Yep.
And you just see that so much in the government, in fundraising, in basically every part of your life, where you have to do the thing you don't want to do to get to the thing you do want to do, but it just doesn't work. And I don't have an example of it working. So
no, me neither. It's a damn shame, because all of these things get folded under one identity. Like these collective movements, racial justice, labor, environmental justice, like they get folded into party platforms, and it becomes transactional at best. And probably at worst, it renders it completely ineffective to anybody not on that side, because it's like, oh, okay, let's talk about like certain, like, you know, and again, I'm not trying to silo these things like racial justice and labor and environment, but because they're all intrinsically linked. But okay, a rising tide lifts all boats. It has to start at the lowest boat in order to bring everybody up together. That is a concept that makes sense to a lot of people, but when you apply it to certain things, they know that it's charged with, oh, that's a leftist thing, or that's that's a left thing. You know, the left is pushing for that. The left wants to completely, you know, fire all cops and let crime run in the streets. And, you know, the right wants to, I don't know, murder all convicts and chain women to trees. I don't know. Like, you know, it's this level of craziness that it's like, oh, well, actually people worked really hard to build this movement, and then the Democratic Party expressed support for one thing, and then it just got swallowed up, and then everybody stopped listening because it joined one side.
That
which sucks. And but it's like, it's so disappointing. And we have opportunities to get people what they want and to really like do the most good for the most amount of people.
Mm-hmm. Which should always be the goal.
And we're just squandering it. Yeah. And there's no recourse at an individual level. All I feel like I can do is talk about it and, you know, help and encourage others through our podcast to, you know, be true to themselves and have these conversations. And you and your work with our clients, it's amazing to say, hey, no. I want you to do what you want to do. Don't fold for somebody else's will. Don't just concede and do what you think they want, because you're sacrificing yourself, and you're sacrificing actually for the good of who you're trying to support. Exactly. So it's such a damn shame. And, you know, I think another cost of this with the two-party system, there's this like really, really kind of weaponized idea around what's the lesser evil, the lesser of two evils.
Which is crazy, because what if we didn't do evil stuff?
Yeah.
Full stop.
What?
That's an idea. I don't know.
That's wild. Yeah. No, but I like evil.
No, I don't like it. It doesn't really work for me.
Maleficent evil is fun. Yeah, that's a crazy idea.
Yeah. And I never want to hear that again. I'm sure either. I will, but I don't want to hear it anymore.
And you know what really pissed me off? When people started bringing in the term harm reduction.
Oh my God.
And I was like, that's not what harm reduction is. Don't. No. That's the lesser evilism. Like,
literally.
Stop. That's not, harm reduction principles are actually really beautiful and like rooted in like a lot of great public health things. And
it's like they're saying the harm is reduced if a person that we like does it.
Right. Exactly.
No. Exactly. It's not good. And then even after the election, when everyone was like, oh my God, every time like Kamala posts something, they'll be like, oh, it should have been you. We could have been so happy. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh my God, get a grip.
Yeah.
These people are not your friends. This is not your icon. This is not your auntie. This is another person. And when we said lesser of two evils, we meant both of them are evil.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Like this,
Yeah.
it's bad enough. Like, let's focus on what we're going to do next. Let's stop like visiting our slightly less evil auntie who will save the day because she wasn't going
Yes.
to. Because it is the two-party system. It is the whole thing. It's
Yep.
not one, doesn't matter who's in there. It's
Yep.
bad.
Well, and now I'm seeing like, you know, any deviation from that. It's all the people who are like, if you voted for a third party candidate, this is your fault. Like Trump won because of you. And like go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, what? Like, I, okay, stop. And again, I'm going to invoke the TikTok comment. Like, attacking individuals is never the right move. Attack the system, friends. Like, this is ridiculous. We are being treated like, or we are treating each other like we're the enemies, and we're not.
No. And then I would see people online who are just like, well, if you want to vote third party, start in the local elections. And I'm like, I did. Now
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Now what? No, like,
You're going to tell me it's bad for like democracy to vote for a third party candidate in the federal election? Okay. Like, fuck you. No. Stop.
it's so crazy.
It's not your fault that we lost. Like, it's like, let's look at the bigger picture. And like we just talked about this on our last episode. Like, or actually, no, we did talk about it on our last episode, but in reference to the cancel culture episode. Like, this is a great way to dodge accountability for like, whoa, how'd we get here in the first place?
Totally. Not to mention, yeah.
It's so much easier to blame all of our shit on one person and be like, look at what Trump has done to America. And it's like, actually, the way
why don't we look at the way Cory Bush, Democrat, voted for some of these things? Now what? Maybe we have a much bigger problem. And I feel like all of these comments are just, I don't know, it disheartens me to see it. And that's like the thing that I have to fight against, not against like my bad feelings about who won the election, but just like the people around where I'm just like, just stop.
Just stop.
This is manipulation. This is virtue signaling. This is using your Instagram to try and make yourself feel absolved, but you're not, because this is happening to all of us. And it's not, it's not because your cousin voted for a third party. It's not even because your brother voted for the
Trump.
Republicans. It's like, it's much larger, and it doesn't help. Like, that was a thing too. After the first time that Trump won, I was one of them. A lot of people were just like, I'll never speak to you again. I'll never talk to you again.
Yeah.
And then after a while, I was like, okay, well, hate to keep repeating this, but now what? Now what do we do?
Yeah.
Now that we don't talk to each other, how are we going to fix it? And I realized you can't. So, I kind of like repaired some of those broken things. And then now with this one, everyone was doing it again. And I'm like, didn't we already see that this doesn't work? We require each other to get out of this. And it is really a system that we're put in to fight with each other. We are following the playbook perfectly for our own demise, and we don't need to do that. It could actually be much more powerful than this. 100%. Which brings me to what I hope we can get into now, so that we're not just, because I feel like I got a rant brewing and I don't want to do that here. I'll save that for my Instagram story where I post all my rants. But yeah, what are the alternatives? What could we do?
It's interesting because, again, like, we can't look at many other countries and go, oh, that would work here, because we're so big. Like, we have 50 states, a bunch of territories, and 330 million people. I don't know what our population count was last, but we have very complex needs. Everyone's different. Like, the state of Kansas has very different needs as a largely like rural, plains-based area than the city of Miami. And like Florida is a great example of like diverse needs, because just look at a topographical map and go, oh, there must be different industries in all of these places. How interesting. I think things should, be a little bit more localized, perhaps. And so My answer to this and like alternatives, I'm more comfortable answering in like big terms, like highly, well, and this is a big term about a small, grassroots scale thing, but like community, localization, hyper local efforts and initiatives, and getting to know your neighbors. Like, again, one of the best proven ways to solve homelessness is to just know who's on the street, meet them, know who's out there, like just
Take all the
document
houses
it.
back from BlackRock.
Yeah, there you go. Actually,
That's a good
that's
one.
kind
That would
of
be,
revolutionary.
could
That
do
would be
that.
fun. We could do that. But for me, it's like let's actually, get together and like decide what's best for us as a community and then like let that ladder up. Like it needs to be ground up. It can't be this top down stuff. But
That's a huge one
there,
for me. That's what I've
yeah,
always said is local government is where it's at. I think if I had
amen. Me
stayed
too.
in New York longer, one of my goals was to run for block captain. And I would used to read all the minutes and like try to attend the different like city council and different meetings. And it would just be like little things.
I
Well,
love
they're big,
that.
but they felt little about like, where are we going to allow motor scooters on this corner?
Yeah.
Should we do city bikes right here?
Yeah.
And that stuff seems dumb in the grand scheme of things, but it isn't because all of these small things lead to big things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was always really big on local elections. I used to go to work and I would have like little note cards where I'd write down who was running and like why I'm voting for them. And I would give different options and I would like pass it around and people would like photocopy it. And I'd be like, please vote, please take this with you. If
Yeah.
you don't, you are my friend. I think we agree on most things. Even if you don't want to read it, just like do these, please.
Yeah.
And that was really exciting for me because you could see change and it felt good afterwards.
Yeah.
And then once I moved to New York, that was in Philly. And then when I moved to New York, yeah, like you couldn't vote in the primary. I
Yeah.
really wanted to vote for Elizabeth Warren despite her flaws, at least in the primary, but we didn't even get a chance because by the time you get to vote in New York, it's already done. And yeah, even the local elections, I canvassed for Maya Wiley with my wife. We were really into it. And then she lost by a landslide and we did
Yeah.
not see that coming.
Yeah.
So just like there's so many things, yeah, being engaged on this like smaller local level where you can really concretely determine the needs of what your community is and not even just voting purely on your own like moral standards, but you can look at the people in the room and say like, oh, we need to prioritize this because I can see that there is 1,000 of you right there. And I know that you need
Yes.
this.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's very hard to conceptualize what somebody in Illinois needs when I've been to Illinois, Indiana, or I have never been, and I don't know their industry. I don't know what their lives are like. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can read about it, but like, I don't fucking know. So like, why are we being expected to, it's just like this. I don't know. It's very hard. But so
Yeah.
to give folks some concrete tangible things to think about. The US is one of the few democracies operating with only two major parties. I think that's saying something. Alternatives that do decenter this binary logic, we have ranked choice voting, which is where people rank candidates by choice, whoever like ranks the highest. It's kind of like if you ever saw the show Four Weddings on
No.
TLC. You never saw Four Weddings? Oh my
No.
God. So okay, the brides all attend each other's weddings and whoever wins their dream honeymoon, but they score it and they rank them. So in a way that like makes it fair. So you could kind of game it if you knew like, okay, this person's wedding was definitely better than mine. I'm going to give them a 0 so it fucks them and, it'll hopefully bump mine up. But it's more, participatory. Like you still get to say, "Oh, this is my last choice." But if I can't have this person, I'd be okay with this person second. I'd be okay with this person third.
Yeah.
So,
But my only flaw with ranked choice voting is that I
yeah.
think a lot of people don't realize you don't have to rank everybody. And I think that skews numbers in a way, like I think that's happened in New York. Well, if you are, this is my big PSA, tell everyone you know. if you have ranked choice voting and you don't like someone and you don't want them to win, do not write their name down anywhere.
Yes.
They shouldn't get any vote from you at all, not any rank. And you can just write in one name. You don't have to rank everybody else.
That.
People need to know that
Okay.
because that's how then, people get these like throwaway votes because you thought that by putting them last, it made them rank last, but it doesn't. You just gave them a vote.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I have more questions about that, but that's interesting. Okay, another option, proportional representation. So parties earn representation proportional to votes. So this is, look, there are some other countries that have issues in how they run things, but they have a more representative, government. I believe like Switzerland has like 12 parties. Lebanon has like all these different facets of like religious based political groups. I don't know what this looks like in practice. I'll just leave it at that. But proportional representation.
It sounds really nice.
Worth
exploring.
Worth exploring. And worth exploring what that would look like for, again, a nation that is set up like ours and what that could look like. And then another one is a coalition government. So these are common in Europe. This is like, from my understanding, a coalition government is like parliamentary thing, and then you have like prime minister, but it's kind of, that's my sense. Is that what your understanding of coalition governments are?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that's an easy way to put it. But these are all just like jumping off points because obviously we're only listing a couple of ideas here, and there's so many other ones. All we know is that the one we have doesn't work. So
yep, definitely. And yeah, I mean, like, there are other things too, like citizens assemblies and again, just things that encourage participation that, like, I don't think there's a one size fits all thing that would work for us. I think it's, again, like something we would have to design very well.
And iterate, probably.
Definitely. I think one of the first ways I have always been of the belief that abolishing the Electoral College is the next best thing to nothing.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. Because I don't know, that's crazy. Like it's rigged.
And it's unfair.
It's unfair.
That is not representative.
Fucked. Yeah. No, it's not. It's not. It's not representative. And even if the popular vote like isn't representative because of, the binary system, people are being forced to pick a side. It's like the Electoral College actually sucks. So let's abolish that. Like, I think it's baseline. Sure. And there have been a lot of brilliant people much smarter than I, who have, kind of offered potential, solutions and, making cases for multi-party democracies and really how to address polarization and stagnation, which I really appreciate. So one person, Lee Drutman, who wrote Breaking the Two-Party Doom Loop, I think is a really great example of, again, actually understanding, okay, how is polarization harming our electorate body? Well, first and foremost, it is a massive national security issue. A fractured and fragmented and divided population is way easier to attack and manipulate. So hence 2016, Russia interfering in our election on social media, different bots, all of that. It was so easy to do. It's crazy because that already existed. We already started to hate each other. And then they were able to engender, a kind of vitriol and hatred that sowed so much distaste and disdain for one another. Like, that's a real threat. And that's a very real threat to national security. So,
super agreed.
Again, we got to think about this at a much larger level. Like, how is this harming us directly? This isn't just about being like, oh, wow, it's super progressive to think about any kind of electoral reform. It's not. This is like in the spirit of what the country was supposed to do. Like, the original, ideators of a lot of this stuff wanted things to change and grow. It wasn't meant to, like, what they set up a long time ago was not meant to just stay there. It wasn't meant to be stagnant. Like, the constitutional fundamentalists, I just kind of crack up about, because I'm like, why are you just holding so tightly to this old document that, like,
and then throwing it away when it doesn't work?
Yeah, exactly. It's just very odd. So,
Well,
like, it's supposed to grow with us. We're growing, and we're one of the most diverse nations in the world, which is incredible, and that's our strength. And we need to lean into that, and we also
Right.
need to foster community within that, because
Right.
this level of division is very dangerous.
No, it really is. And also, this is a comment that I have about the Mexican government. And not to say that the Mexican government is perfect. I don't think that. But in their constitution, the government is not allowed to make statements from their personal belief system. They're not allowed to make a statement about any type of issue unless it is like the will of the people, unless there's like consensus that this is what the people are saying, because they're true representatives. And you think that in the United States, that's what's supposed to be happening. But if you think about it, obviously that's not what's happening.
Right.
So they are bound to that. They are not allowed to say like what any of our politicians are doing at this point, where they can just like speak off the cuff. They have to speak in a way that represents the people. And on top of that, I don't know if pacifist is the right word, but there's also another pacifist nature to the country and the government, where they are not allowed to say anything that incites violence of any kind or war. So they can't say, we condemn this country. They can only say we support that country. And so that is just like another thing that really kind of like binds the way that they're allowed to talk on behalf of the people. And I think that's really interesting. And I feel like it's something that I think we all assumed growing up, like learning that like, oh, the land of the free, the government works great, and the checks and balances and everything. You just assume that that's what's happening, but it's not what's happening at all. And they should not be allowed to speak as freely as our employees, the government. They should not be allowed to do those things, or they should at least get put on a performance improvement plan, or maybe suspended, or maybe fired. We need to speak to HR. They are violating everything and they're not doing their jobs properly.
Who do we speak to about this? Because who's HR?
I don't know. I think often wrong is HR. So please write in if you have any comments about our employees, because we are not happy with them either, and we should really do something.
Yes. However, if you are a Carrot Impact employee and you work directly for me and Lisa, take it up with someone else. Thank you. But I couldn't agree more. That I'm happy to serve as HR, unelected HR.
I'll say what needs to be
you.
said. Actually, that's another thing. The stuff I've done, like I've done ghostwriting. I've done a lot of writing in government over the years. And one thing that I always end up, and as like a consultant, people will write something for the government and I'll be like, make it meaner. Yeah. And they're like, what? And I'm like, no, meaner. Say more. Meaner. Go off.
Mean. Go off. I love it.
Why are we being nice to them? They're not being nice to us.
Yeah. Amen.
It always works.
Man, I'm just so over the like party loyalty, like bullshit that we get. And it's really screwing us. And this is a soapbox topic for me. But I also do find across, the political range of views, people largely agree with this. People understand that the two-party system is flawed and that we need a more representative way to engage civically.
Yeah. And I think most people, I feel like it's hard to do it on your own, but if someone reminds you that there's other ways to think about this, I think people snap back into it, snap back to themselves really quickly. And you'll be like, oh, right. If I'm thinking in the terms of the system that has been laid out for us, I'm very angry and I hate you. But if I remove that framework, we're good. It's all good.
You're just
I hate them. They suck.
Like me. I hate them. They suck. Yeah.
And this is another thing. Yeah. And that's another thing from Cedric Johnson, who said, pushing for class-based analysis and radical coalition building over symbolic politics or party loyalty. It doesn't get us anywhere. What we need is each other, and what we need is to take care of each other. And the government's not doing that. So
Yep.
why are we going to keep doing the system that they laid out for us when everything else isn't working either? Maybe all of it doesn't work.
For sure. Yes. I'll throw in one other, Wendy Brown, who has said that both parties serve neoliberalism. And I would
Definitely.
agree for fucking sure. Um,
Definitely.
and she really argues for reinvesting in the cultural foundations of democracy itself. And
Or reinvesting in the cultural foundations of the people, of
yes,
the cultures
exactly.
that exist. Yeah.
Right. Which should be what democracy means.
You would think.
You would think.
It's implied, but not realized.
In this version. Whoops. So yeah, man, I don't know. I think there's so much here, and I hope that, our episodes on binaries and silos really feel like they set this one up, because I think we've said so much about how those harm society, and understanding that those principles of siloing issues and beliefs and people consolidate power, and the binary further consolidates power because it makes it two things. It's not
Yes.
it's not like 10 silos, it's two silos. The power is consolidated in both of those. And at the end of the day, it should be with the people.
Yes.
it's
Always with
not.
the people.
Always with the people.
Yeah. And also, if any of our episodes make you upset, please return early and often to the revolution
Comment
episode.
section. Oh, yes.
And also the
Yeah.
comment section. Yeah. Okay. This is a conversation. This is meant to be a conversation. Me and Claire are going off about what we think about this, but we definitely want to hear from you. So just another plug, please leave a comment where you're listening to this, or on our podcast, Instagram, or on our website, carrotimpact.com/often wrong. Cause we are talking a lot on this podcast about how all of these silos keep us so small, so divided, so performative. It's exhausting. I'm so bored by it while also being actively harmed by it. Weird feeling. And we don't want to be siloed. This is not for me and Claire to just give you our ideas so that you can take them.
Yep.
What do you have to say? Because every 5 episodes we do our What We Got Wrong episode, and we want to talk about what you said, because there's a lot to dig into here, and we want to hear it. I'm sure other people want to hear it too, and it is the thing that's going to get us further. Really thinking this is such a simple concept of like the two-party system and how much it doesn't work. And it really bothers me how much asking for more than that feels like it's radical, feels like entitlement, when really it's so there's so much more. It's actually
Totally
disrespectful to try and make me or anyone feel like asking for more than what we have is too much.
Yep.
It's not. I'm over it.
Completely. And it's also like, again, there are a lot of people who think any critique of the government is anti-American, which, if you go back, America was supposed to be about, it's safe to critique the government.
Yes.
And you won't be detained.
That was the fun part of the story. Throwing the tea in the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
or
exactly.
Whatever it was.
That's
the
the
body
point.
Of water.
Like, that's the point. It's supposed to grow and work for us. Like, government is supposed to do that. And it's not. It's working for industries and institutions in a lot of ways, and the people at the top.
Who all happen to be the same people.
Oh, that's so crazy. That
It
almost
is really
feels
crazy.
like not an accident.
It's just too much, because I'm like, this could be way cooler. We could be having a better time.
We could be
And we're
having
arguing
a
with
better
each
time.
other when, like, I want a cooler time for you too. Even if I don't like you,
God.
I still
Amen.
want you to have a better time.
I think, honestly, that's the most compelling logic that I've ever
If
heard.
I ran for president, my platform would be, this could be so much fucking cooler.
Yeah.
Let's talk
And we
about
could have a better time than we're currently having. You
Let's
want to have a better time? Vote for Lisa Nwankwo. I might write you in moving forward.
it. Literally, you should.
Honestly,
I would be
fucking love
good.
that.
I like the people. Power to the people.
Power to the people.
I'll
Yeah.
get assassinated immediately. Oh my God.
Oh no!
So that's the only reason I'm not doing it, because I'm too young to die. Too cute, too cool.
But you would be so pretty as a martyr on like statues,
Oh my God, so true.
and you would look like this forever in the
Oh my
people's
God, I
mind.
love that.
So there are some pros to a young assassination.
I'm thinking it's back on the table.
Think about it, okay?
Yeah.
And we can talk about it later, but I'm very happy with that.
Yes.
It would be sad sad if you were assassinated, but you would be immortalized as like as the beautiful person that you
Oh
are.
my God, I would get a statue probably.
You would for sure. You would probably get a library, dude. I think there's.
Hell, I love library.
I know. That'd be really, really good.
That would be my legacy.
Honestly, I kind of love that. And she made the world a better time.
We had a better time.
We had a
with
better
Lisa.
time with Lisa.
People
Oh
say
my
that.
God, I love that.
People will be saying that.
They will. I say that now.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, people, we've come to the end of our episode. And
Sure did.
I hope, again, that you don't just take what we said, but how we're thinking about things and how we're encouraging you to think about things and talk about things, being in relationship to your surroundings and ideas and people and asking better questions. And that's really important. So I hope you do that this week. I hope you ask better questions. And
I hope you tell them to us if you do.
yes, I hope you do that also. It would be nice. We'd love that. Thanks. Thanks, friends. Okay.
Thanks for listening. We'll talk
thanks
to you
for
later.
listening.
We'll be
We'll
back next
see ya.
week.
Yeah. We'll see you next week.
Love you. Bye.
Bye. Often Wrong is produced by Lisa Nwankwo, Claire Cornetta, and Joe Abdella. This episode was shot and edited by Joe Abdella. Special thanks to Michael Drummonds. Often Wrong is a Carrot Impact podcast. Go to carrotimpact.com/oftenwrong to learn more.